But today, we're beginning a brand new series today. And it's called Stressed Out. And the reasoning that we're going to be looking at this is we are a people who are stressed out. We in America are stressed out people. And actually, it's very interesting. Stress seems to be growing, not going away. And it's not defined by age boundaries, because I know that more and more anxiety has risen. All kinds of different things are going on, and even our younger people too. So like if you're stressed out, probably the person sitting next to you is also stressed out from something. And so what we're going to do over the next 4 weeks is we're going to look in the scriptures and see what God has for us to live a more fulfilled life, to live a life that has less stress. Because believe it or not, God actually knows what he's talking about. And so we're going to be looking at that. So just a few statistics for you. I don't know if any of you are statistic people, but according to a 2015 study by the American Psychological Association, it showed that 37% of Americans report anger or irritability due to stress. In other words, you had a stressful day, you come home, you might have took it out on somebody in the family, or you might have been mean to a coworker, or those kinds of things. 39%, in order to cope with stress, 39% of us overeat or eat unhealthily. I might go to Wendy's when I'm stressed. And then in the same breath, think about this, 31% skip a meal due to stress. There's two ways to go. You eat unhealthily, or you just don't even eat at all due to stress. And stress comes from a number of factors. I mean, let's be honest. Some of us have really, really stressful jobs. Some of us have stressful homes because we have so much going on. Got the kid here, the kid there, the kid there, the kid there, the kid there. PTA meeting, go back to school, go back here, go here. I got to go to work. I got to get this. I got to get dinner on the table. I got to do all this stuff. How many of you stressed just by me doing that? If you are, don't go to an auction. You'll have a hard time. They talk fast there. And it's not like we are given a lot of wiggle room. I mean, let's be honest. Some of us have to work day in, day out to make ends meet. Some of us, we have to, after a full day of work, come home and take care of A, B, C, and D, because your house has to work. Has to be able to keep going. And when you get to the point of exhaustion, you're exhausted. And it's hard to deal with the stress. And we sometimes end up doing this. We sometimes just end up working for the next break, the next vacation, the next thing. And even on the other side of it, we don't find rest because it was just a break. Because we had been going for so long, we were so stressed, we were so obsessed with keeping up that we weren't able to keep ourselves. So today we're going to begin this new series about dealing with stress. And God actually has specific ways for us to deal with this. There are four things. Four things, ready? Biblical ways for a better life. First one is stop. The second one is acknowledge. The third one is appreciate. And the fourth one is enjoy. And these four principles come from all over the scriptures. But today we are going to simply talk about stopping. Now, what does it mean to stop? Everybody's like, stop. Stop means, it means to discontinue doing something, right? To cease. Or as David said yesterday, cease and desist. It's so hard in our day and age to stop because we are asked so much. We get done with work and then all of a sudden somebody asks, hey, could you do this? Oh, yeah, sure. All of a sudden, someone from the church is saying, hey, can you do this? Sure. Or it's I'll pray about it. By the way, if you ever tell me I'll pray about it, I'm pretty much expecting no. Just so you know. No, I'm just kidding. But so many of us keep going every 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, that we rarely have days where we just stop being productive. We stop. We don't stop. We have to either make more money or we have to keep up to this standard or society standards or all these different kinds of things. But believe it or not, God created us. He designed us to stop. And that's what we're going to look at today. If you would like to turn your Bibles to Exodus chapter 20, you can also see up here on the screen, it will be there. And let me bring you up to speed a little bit with Exodus. Exodus is an amazing, amazing story of how a group of people became the people of God. They were people who were enslaved in Egypt by the Pharaoh. And let me tell you something. When you're enslaved, you don't get a choice of how much you work. You work until your slave master tells you you're done. And all the people of Israel knew was work. They worked 24/7. Again, not because they chose, but because they were forced to. And so as God reaches into Egypt and he saves them, he takes them out of Egypt. And if you want like a really quick, it's not exactly biblical, but if you want to go play-by-play, watch The Prince of Egypt later tonight. It's a cartoon. It was back in the 90s. I still watch it today. It's wonderful. It's a good movie. But God brings them out of Egypt by showing these amazing miracles and plagues. And it affects Egypt so much that Pharaoh finally says, yeah, you can go. And later they get to the Red Sea and it gets dramatic. And God provides a way through the Red Sea. Well, after all of this, after he saves them and says, you are my people, they come to this place called Sinai. And they make a covenant. Now, a covenant is very simple. It's an agreement. It's where, hey, I saved you. You are my people. Now, this is how you live into being my people. And in Exodus chapter 20, that's a part of the covenant. And it's going to be very familiar. It's the 10 Commandments. And what he said is that this is the best way to live. This is the way to be my people. So this is where we pick up. We're actually right in the middle of the 10 Commandments. We're actually on the 4th commandment. Exodus chapter 20, beginning with verse 8. Remember the Sabbath day and treat it as holy. 6 days you may work and do all of your tasks, but the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. Do not do any work on it, not you, your sons or daughters, your male or female servants, your animals, or the immigrant who is living with you. Because the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and everything that is in them in 6 days, but rested on the 7th day. That is why the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Now, oftentimes, we think to ourselves two things when God is speaking to Israel. We think, that's just for Israel. This 10 Commandments, this is actually for Israel. It doesn't have to apply to my life today. Or we take it the other way and we say, the 10 Commandments is central to everything. Well, it's actually not either of those things. Because when Jesus came, he came to free us from the law. But in doing so, he fulfilled the law, and he asks us to live a brand new life, an actual better life than even what the law gave. But the Sabbath was one of those things that Jesus he sometimes would go out and do things on the Sabbath and help people. And that gets a little confusing about things. But what Jesus came to do was to free us from the law. And if he frees us from the law, then, yeah, you can help people on the Sabbath, absolutely. But that doesn't mean that you should ignore the Sabbath in your life. So what does it mean to take a Sabbath? Some of us think that today is a Sabbath. Sunday's not the Sabbath, friends. Yesterday was a Sabbath. So all of you worked on the Sabbath yesterday. Sabbath really comes from the Hebrew word to mean to stop, to cease. It's as simple as that. A lot of people have taken Sabbath and added more meaning. People are like, oh no, this is a Sabbath. It's the day that you do go to church. And no, Sabbath legitimately means in the original biblical text to stop. Stop what you're doing. Stop being productive. Stop trying to make money. Stop doing what you're doing and rest. And from this, we come to understand that God had an intentionality for Sabbath. And it's actually right here within the text. It's so beautiful. First of all, remember the Sabbath day and treat it as holy. Remember to rest and treat it as holy. Holy is another word that we also like to add stuff. But holy in its most raw form means set it apart, set apart. Take a day, set it apart, and rest. Don't work, period. And it says 6 days you may do work and do all of your tasks. Now, how many of you, when you read that, you're like, it's so hard to do my tasks in 7 days. How in the world would I do it in 6 days? We're going to get to that here in a moment. Cliffhanger. Verse 10, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. Don't do any work on it. And the reason why you do this in verse 11, because the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and everything that is in them in 6 days, but rested on the seventh day. We get to this first reality that God, who is all-powerful, who creates this world from nothing, rests. Which is totally counter to what you're expecting, right? Because God's like, no, I mean, God can handle anything. He's on all the time. Well, God rested. The creation wasn't completed until he rested. And what we find that as God creates the world in 6 days and rests on the seventh day is that he puts a natural order and rhythm in the creation that he created. That's our first point. We are designed with order and rhythm. Go ahead and go to the next one. I'm sorry. I went out of... It's as simple as that. You and I are not infinite. We are not all-powerful. We do get tired. Some of you are sleeping now. And the reason why is because we're finite. We are not able to do everything that God does. But if God, who was willing to rest, rests, maybe we should do what he does, because maybe he's a little bit more powerful and can handle more stuff, but he still rests. Second of all, Sabbath brings justice in our world. And that comes back to verse 10. Do not do any work on it, not you, nor your sons, your daughters, your male or female servants, your animals, or the immigrant who is living with you. See, this law is being given to male landowners. They are the most powerful in Israel. And basically God says, you're going to rest, and as you rest, so will all the people on your household. So will your family. So will the people who work for you. Now, for us, we live in a different economy, but I want you to think about something. If we were to rest collectively, think of how much rest would be given to people who don't ever get rest. One of the things about Sabbath is it brings justice. It brings this willingness to live as God wants us to live. And as we do it, it gives other people an opportunity to rest themselves. Again, we find ourselves that our individual actions affects other people in ways that we forget sometimes. And last but not least, Sabbath is an act of faith and will deepen your relationship with God. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, I don't have a relationship with God, I'm not even sure if God is real. You might feel that way. It's cool. But I'm here to tell you something right now. Try this. Try taking a day of rest and see what happens in your life. And you will find this to be amazingly lifting. It will lift your life with a natural order and rhythm of work and rest. You will see people more often. You'll be able to have relationships with people as you rest together. You will free people from their own busy lives to be able to say, wait, I can breathe. I can rest myself. I don't need to live up to the standards of going here, there, everywhere, getting... Yes. But coming back to faith, for those of us who believe in God and say, yeah, I follow God with everything, if we as people of God do not take a Sabbath, we are not living into the life that God has given us. We're not. We are missing an opportunity to give a whole entire day to God. So how is it an act of faith? How does it deepen our relationship with God? It's very simple. If you work 7 days a week, and the reason that you work 7 days a week is because you have to make sure that you have this much money, or you have to have this kind of way of living, or you have to get away from your family. All of these different things. Whatever you think that you have to do, it all comes from you. What you're saying is, my standard for myself is better than the created rhythm and order that God made for this world. And basically what you're saying is, God, I don't trust you for that seventh day. I have to take it upon myself to work my tail off to make sure I provide for my family, myself, and my standard. But people who follow God have a different way of looking at things. We don't see our jobs as something that we do. It's something that we see as a gift from God. Our jobs are a gift from God so that we will be provided for. And so when you take one day of your week and totally stop producing, it is an act of faith saying to God, I depend on you, that I can stop an entire day from earning money and from producing and contributing to society and all of these different things. I trust you enough that you're going to provide for me. And that's really difficult. But it is an act of faith. Terence Fretheim, that long slide, says this about this law. God gives the law in the service of life. God gives the law not only for the sake of the life of those who receive it, but also for the sake of the life of the neighbor. Indeed, all of creation, who they are called to serve. So not only is it an act of faith, but it also becomes an act of faith in the world around you. When you say to people, no, I'm not going to work on this day, when you put these kinds of boundaries up because I'm going to provide, it says something about your life. That's why God gave it to these people who worked their entire lives. They were doing something so radically different from what they were doing before that them just to take a day and stop was a testimony to say, we believe in God, and we believe that God provides, and we believe that God is going to take care of us, even if I stop for an entire day. And then as we do that, this trickles down to everyone in our lives. Our relationships become greater because we're spending time not working, not producing, but loving each other. See, Sabbath is actually an act of love. It's not just about your faith, it's about your relationship with others. And that faith will be testified to any that you come into contact with. Now, all of you are like, whoa. I didn't know that a commandment could be so important. But it is. And the reason why this is so important is because so many of us ignore it. I've heard pastors say, ignore this commandment. Yeah, that was for the time and day. No. Don't listen to that dude. God created you in a certain way, and you need rest. Now, comes really the hard part, right? I mean, bringing this into our lives, because some of us, you probably have shared with me, or you're thinking inside of yourself, I cannot stop. You don't understand. I'm behind my bills as it is. I can't stop working because of this person or because of this situation. Let me tell you something. I get it. Being in that situation it's tough to see any way out. But God will provide. God will provide. Now, how does that look? God will provide in certain kinds of ways. I mean, I've heard, I can't tell you how many times I've prayed this prayer with somebody and something has happened. Sometimes what happens is you get promoted in your job and you're able to make more money in less time. Sometimes when people put this into practice and pray for God to provide, the people take an honest look on the way that they're living and they come to the realization that, oh, I'm living above what I can actually afford. And they look at their budgets and they go, yeah. Sometimes it's not that easy. Sometimes it comes back to exterior circumstances where years upon years upon years upon years have caught up. And you just have to. God will provide. I can't tell you exactly how, but He will. But you have to take the day and give it to God. You have to take the day and say, God, I am doing this on faith that you will provide. Let me share with you just a personal story about this. About 2 months ago, things got really busy. Really, really, really busy. And I started to work on my day where I stopped. And as work began to intrude upon this day where I've always had to stop and rest and give it to God, I just got busier and busier and busier. I found more and more things to do on that day off, as well as on all the other days that I was working. But I knew that there was a light at the end of the tunnel. After this is done, I'm going to be taking a vacation. Things are going to be great. And so instead of working with a natural rhythm of 6 days working and the 7th day off, I worked 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, until I finally were packing for vacation, and I have 101 fever, body aches, and, oh, Brooke, can you load the car? See, what had happened, and I'm not joking, in the most practical way possible, I had worked myself down to a point that when I finally got to a time to rest, my body couldn't even really rest because I had worn myself down and I had become sick with a respiratory flu. And my trip down to the beach was, well, Dayquil helped a lot. But it wasn't fun. Basically, yeah, I had to lay down and rest. And then, to cap it all off, my wife, who gets to spend vacation with me, we enjoy the days and things like that. And on the last day of vacation, she got the fever and the body aches. So my inability to stop for 2 months straight not only affected me, it affected my wife. Because I couldn't say to God, I trust you to take care of this. Sabbath is essential. And I'm telling you, if you practice Sabbath, your life will be better. If you make space to rest, your relationships will be better. You will feel less stressed. You will actually be more efficient. You will be a more efficient person if you take a day off. You know why? Because if you have a continuous 7-day off, you will find a way to be more efficient in the 6 days that you have to work. I know that sounds like, no, that's not true. Trust me, you'll be amazed in what you can accomplish when you say, I have to let this go before the 7th day. You will have a less stressed life. You will have a more fulfilled life if you live in the way that God created you to live. He's giving you rest, friends. Make sure you receive it and take it. One last thing. The Israelites, when they received this, you know how they got their food? They didn't go to the grocery store. They had to grow their food. And if you have ever grown your own garden, if you've ever been on a farm, you know how much work, how much tender care you have to keep that going. And for them to stop working in the fields for a single day would look like a death sentence. Because the crops aren't going to make it if I don't tend to them. God provided. And as they rested, God provided. Would you pray with me? God, I just give you thanks that you care enough about us to give us a way to live, even like a weekly schedule, God, The fact that you have thought all of this through because you know who we are, you know our capabilities, you know our shortcomings and our failures, and you know that we need rest. So God, I'd ask that if there is anybody here who needs this message to be embodied in their lives, I would ask that you would grant them the way to rest in you. To rest that their faith grows. To rest so that others would see their lives and say, there's something different. They take this time off. Why? Why are they so much happier, less stressed, all these things? Grant me the ability to have faith, to rest in you, and to trust that you will provide far beyond what we expect, that the bills will be taken care of, that life will become better, and that we might live in your peace. We ask this in your Son's holy name, Jesus. Amen.